Okay, welcome to episode 2 of my new channel. If you've seen the first video, you know the basic premise where I'm going to produce a doodle of some sort, and hopefully you, the viewers, will get involved, download the file from our Patreon page, which is linked below, and then add to the drawing whatever you feel that it needs next. And it's going to be a sort of ongoing project between you and myself. Okay, even though this is only my second video, I've been absolutely amazed by the response from the first video, the first doodle or sketch that I produced. I wasn't really anticipating a massive response. I was expecting maybe 1 or 2 people send me through their interpretations of the sketch that I produced, which I'm absolutely blown away by. It's amazing. So I'm going to go through each of those pieces of work in turn, tell you who's sent them in and give my comments on them through the video. I'm also obviously going to be drawing this new sketch, and I'm hoping that this will inspire a fresh batch of interpretations from people that are watching. It is a rough sketch, and therefore it's entirely open to interpretation. I'm placing no restrictions upon what you do with it, so you could just further the drawing with more lines, you could just shade it in, you could add colours, you could add texture, you could completely change the kind of feel of the piece of work, as long as some element is still visible, it bears some resemblance. I mean, if I get a piece of work and I can't figure out how it relates to the sketch that I've actually supplied, then I may not include it. But as long as I can see that it's stemmed from my sketch, then I'm definitely going to be showing those off on follow-up videos like this one. So in terms of the first response that I'm going to show, the first one is from Elliot Lumps, and as you can see, he's not only added colour, but he's pretty much rendered it as a kind of complete piece. I really like the colour scheme. I really think it's quite interesting how there's almost, with the kind of glowing yellowy colours, there's an area where it looks a bit like a sort of minotaur. It's got like a little beady eye and a nostril. It looks like it's got horns on its head. So I really find that fascinating. I like the dark background. It really contrasts well with the colour scheme. It's quite a muted kind of neutral colour scheme, which helps pick out the glowing elements in there, which is great. So I'm really pleased with that, Elliot. Thank you very much for your contribution. I'm a bit unsure how to go with the channel, really. I'm obviously very open to suggestions, so I'm happy to critique people's work if they decide that they want me to do that at this point. I'm just very grateful that people have submitted work. I don't want to get overly critical straight away without having people's permission or people wishing that. So I'm just going to gratefully accept people's contributions, and I'll talk about the things that I like initially. If people feel that they want my opinions in terms of things that could have been improved, then I'm happy to give that as well. But as it is for the moment, I'm quite happy just to receive the additions, the interpretations that people have done, and just show them off. I might want to continue with 1 or 2 of them at certain points. So I may produce other videos in which I kind of pick the baton back up from the people that have sent me images. So if they've added elements to it, I'll continue working into it. So it could be a little bit of a backwards and forwards collaboration. So I'll either leave the work as it is, people have sent me in their contributions, and that's their finished interpretation. If I see any potential to continue the image, then I'm going to ask the person permission, and I'm going to continue working into 1 or 2 of them perhaps. Because what I'd also want for this channel is not just to be endlessly producing sketches like this. I'd quite like to show some of the kind of textures, the lighting effects, the kind of overall finish that I like to put into a piece of work. Okay, so the next contribution is from OMalley. I apologise if I pronounce any of these names wrong. I'm bound to do so at some point. But I really like Leith's interpretation. He's taken it in an entirely different angle from my style, which is brilliant. The actual forms are still visible there in the trees in the scene, and it's turned into a really humorous, really comical interpretation, and very much represents Leith's style, where we've got some ducks or geese interacting with cats, and I'm guessing the ducks are not huge fans of the cats in this particular scene. But in terms of the actual technique, some really nice textures going off there in the canopy of the trees. Really nice sketchy feel, quite loose, quite vibrant overall colour scheme. Really quite pleased with that, so thank you very much, Leith, for that contribution. It's great. Again, something very different than perhaps I would produce myself, so that's great to see one of my sketches totally interpreted in a way that I would not have anticipated, so that's really interesting. Thank you. So, like I say, contributions can be really good for just creating the unexpected. It's easy for me to get locked into my own particular style and keep producing the same kind of things, and you'll probably find that there's a certain shapes and forms that I keep returning to, but hopefully with people's input I'll end up going in different directions as well. Okay, so the next contribution is from Andy Gradeville. I apologise, Andy, if I've butchered your name there. I know we've been chatting, or you've been commenting quite a lot on my YouTube channel, so I apologise if I'm mispronouncing your name. But Andy's contributed, like I was saying before, it doesn't have to be taken to a full, polished, painted version. It could just be an extension on the drawing, really exploring more of the drawing elements. I think sometimes a piece of work is most exciting at its drawing stage until you've actually decided on a colour scheme. It could almost go in any direction. You can start to picture it as lots of different things. So Andy's added some real kind of sci-fi elements to this, so it looks like a sort of alien landscape. I like the mix of the machine kind of forms, the technological forms with the natural forms. Very much the kind of thing that I'm interested in, so really love that, Andy. Thank you very much for that. So I'm hoping as you see some other people's interpretations that you're starting to look at the drawing that I'm producing this week and start to see some potential, get some ideas of the kind of things that you could do, and realise perhaps that, you know, it doesn't matter whether it's a fully fledged finished piece. It's more about continuing a dialogue, exploring forms and textures and colours and concepts. So I know some people perhaps just feel that, you know, lack of confidence, they've not got a piece of work to a finished standard. But that's not what I'm asking for, really. I'm asking for people's involvement in the process. So something that I benefit from. I like to have fresh outlooks from other people. And I'm hoping it might just tap into potential in other people's imagination too for them. So let's look at another interpretation. We have a piece of work from Kira Marie, who's interpreted it in a really quite explosive interpretation, where it looks, funnily enough, very much like the latest tutorial that I've just uploaded, which was a volcano. Some real fierce looking colours and vibrant textures going on there, so really nice work, Kira. Really like that. I still see some forms that look a little bit like bones, as well as some fiery explosive things going off in there as well, so that's great. Again, I can see pretty much intact there's some of the shapes that I've created initially, so Kira's definitely taken the image and actually worked with the image that I provided and tried to add another element to it, so really like that, thank you. If you are one of the people that have submitted artwork this time, please don't feel that, you know, you can only do it once. I want this to be an ongoing process where we can keep sort of growing together as artists. So if you found it enjoyable, you found it beneficial to just play around with shapes, textures, colours and interpret things in a new way, and you want to continue that exploration, then please keep sending things in. Don't limit it to a one-time only, please. Okay, so the next piece of work, the next contribution is from Ivo Stefanec. Again, Ivo, I do apologise if I've mispronounced your name. I'll do my best. I'll put the names up on the screen anyway, but I really like this. So he's not really added any colour, he's just played around with the lines and the tone, but he's extended some of the shapes, added more branch features on there. It really looks quite ghoulish, quite creepy looking, which I think is a really nice look for it. So it has a continued organic look, but at the same time it looks quite kind of spectral, almost ghost-like. Really nice interpretation. Thanks very much for that, Ivor. The next contribution is from Cerro Again, I hope I've got the name close to what the actual pronunciation should be, Sarah. A fantastic piece of work, really beautiful painting. It's definitely become more Sarah than my style in this particular piece, and that's fine. I can still see some of the shapes in the branches that the bird is sat on. And obviously artists bring their own imagination to things that they look at. So if I've provided something pretty abstract in terms of just a collection of shapes, then obviously the kind of thing that you do not ordinarily is going to dictate the way that you interpret those shapes. If I start adding colour and texture, then that's going to be a different matter. But because I've kept it loose as just line work and shading, then obviously you can bring more easily your own vision to it. And this really is a spectacular piece of work. I really love the colours, the realism of the bird, the fine detail, as well as the kind of soft focus, the depth of field effects. So you've got blurred vegetation, leaves in the background. Really gorgeous piece of work, that, Sarah. I love it. And the kind of branch forms that I've created, really the bird looks very happy amongst that. So very pleased with that. In terms of this latest sketch that I'm producing, I'm not quite sure what it could resemble. I'm trying to make them all a little bit different. I mean, there's going to be a certain elements that I bring to each sketch that is my kind of vision, the kind of forms that I gravitate towards, but I'm going to try not to repeat myself too much. I don't want it to feel like it's the same challenge every week, so I'm going to try and come up with shapes that perhaps I haven't done previously. So the other forms that are from episode 1 were much more branch-like. I'm trying to come up with something that's a little bit different this time. Sometimes I find by repositioning things, I start to see it in a totally different way, which is really nice. So another interpretation is from Marion. Anita's not really added too much in the way of line work, which is fine. She's added a colour scheme and a lighting effect, which is really dramatic, really powerful. And this I find really inspiring, actually. I like the colour combination, I like the glowing effect. It's very, very much the kind of thing that I'm really interested in. So Anita, I may well be extending this and working into this one particularly on a future video. It's definitely got me thinking about the potential. I might try combining a couple of people's work together, perhaps. That's another possibility. I hope people are fine with the idea that I might work into people's work. I am providing my own sketches, so I'm extending that courtesy out to other people, and I'm hoping people are going to be fine with the idea of me taking their work and continuing to run with it as well. It's only really going to appear on this channel. It's not like I'm going to be trying to sell other people's work. I won't be printing them up or won't be selling them. They're only going to appear on this channel. But I definitely like Anita's interpretation in terms of mood and colours. So that's definitely something that I'm considering working into. We'll see how the time frame allows. It may be that before I get a chance to do that, I get some responses to this latest piece of work, and it may be that that becomes more of a priority and I'm more inspired by that, but we'll see how things go. next interpretation, which I really like, is from Michael Skiba. Some awesome elements to this. I see some real strange features going on in here, from teeth over on the left-hand side to eyes hidden in the central feature. Seems to be quite a few sort of body sections, body parts hidden amongst the piece of work. I also like the kind of colour scheme. It makes it almost look like it's carved out of wood, which is a really nice look. It's become quite a kind of joyous exploration of form and shapes. There's something quite happy seeming about this particular piece of work. Very lively looking, which I really love. So thank you very much for that contribution, Michael. Really appreciate that. Lovely piece of work. I especially love the highlights, the whites that's been added into that. Has added a new, different dimension to the shapes. So they look a lot more 3D now, perhaps, than they did before, which is great. We've got a fantastic piece here from Kelsey Lloyd. Really vibrant. Love the rendering of the actual forms. They've got an almost unearthly, kind of shiny quality to the surface of them, and then sort of contrasted with the lightning and the clouds and the nice bluey green backgrounds. Really nice sort of mix of colours and composition. Very dynamic looking. Really like it. Become really fascinated with lightning at the moment too. So this really appeals to me at the moment, seeing lightning and expressing that. So really appreciate that contribution. Thanks, Kelsey. Contributions is from Angus McCrae, and Angus's piece of work is again really quite surreal. Definitely brought his own imagination to this, which is awesome. We've got some really creepy looking spiders with almost human looking eyes and building webs amongst the shapes in a strange kind of stormy portal tunnel. Lots of strange things going on there. Angus, love it. So again, I can see the shapes and the forms down in the bottom area of that scene, so he has definitely used them. They're there, but then it's spun off and then, so to speak, in an entirely different direction, creating his own web of ideas onto there. Okay, next up we have a piece submitted by Francesco Pathari. Really like this piece. I think if you look carefully, you'll be able to see there is the form of an elephant. But as it's also titled Skelephant, you'll notice that it kind of resembles a skeleton as well as the actual elephant, and is holding a branch in its trunk. I think that's a really clever interpretation. Really appreciate that, Francesco. I love how people looking at abstract forms manage to see different things that way. And our minds search for meaning and shape and form. We all manage to see things differently, which is great. I think that's a really imaginative use, and the stance of the elephant limbs looks really natural, looks really cool. I also think the background with the sort of green and red colours, very suggestive of some kind of animal forms as well. Not quite sure. Still quite sketchy, still quite loose, which is great. Leaves a lot to the imagination. So that's something that, you know, could easily be worked into in the future as well. Great, really appreciate that, Francesco. Thank you very much for that. Okay, and this contribution comes from Richard Sweat, who has used a gradient of colour from blue to reddy orange on one side, and he's also used some of the negative spaces between the forms and shaded them in a white tone, which is really interesting. I think sometimes you can get so fixated on the actual forms that you think you've created that you don't notice the negative spaces that have been created as well. So that's a really nice way of reinterpreting, of looking at the forms in a different way. So this is part of a conversation. This is not necessarily supposed to be a final outcome for any of these, and if you feel that a piece of work just needs a few steps like Richard has done, and then you want to bounce it back to me, and maybe it could start a dialogue in which I'm able then to add some more on top of that. Sometimes that's going to work, sometimes that's not, but whatever level of input you want to put on it, then I'm always welcoming to that. I'll always receive that gladly. Maybe in the future, if I get swamped with contributions, which I'm hoping, you can't guarantee, we'll have to see how it goes. It will hopefully prove popular in time. Then I may have to start being more selective. But for the time being, I'm just really grateful for all the contributions. I'm going to keep showing as many as I possibly can. So back to this week's drawing now. I'm hoping that you can start to see possibilities for where you could take this particular piece of work. Pretty abstract. It's always going to be pretty abstract, so the lighting effects may make it look like believable 3D forms, but in terms of it actually being anything, then it isn't anything particular. It is very much a collection of abstract shapes, and you might be an artist that likes the idea of abstract shapes and is quite happy with that. In some of the examples you've seen, some of the interpretations, people have kept it as quite abstract. It might be that you see the hint of some realistic looking things and you want to bring out some elements that look like tangible things or recognizable things, in which case it could take on more of a surreal look. Or you might be a more traditional painter and drawer, in which case you could reinterpret it and make it look like something that is logical and makes sense in a real world scene. Again, it's entirely up to you. I want your interpretation, so please feel free to submit. There is a link down in the description to a Dropbox link in which you can upload straight from your iPad or your iPhone or your whatever device, your computer, your desktop, or your Android device, or your PC, whatever it is you use. You can attach an image on the Dropbox link. I will receive them all there. Only I can see them. Just make sure to put your name on there so I can credit you in an upcoming video. If you want to contact me in any other way to discuss things in more detail, well, just leave me comments on the videos or on my channel, or again on my Patreon page. You can contact me there as well, and I'll be sure to reply to anyone who's wanting to talk to me. Okay, I'm going to leave this episode sketch like that. I hope that you find this form interesting and you can think of some things that you'd like to do to this form yourself. This image and the Procreate file, as well as a JPEG, will be available on my Patreon page. You don't have to become a patron, you don't have to pay anything, you can download this for free. So if you go to my Patreon page, download this file in whatever format suits you best, whether it's the Photoshop file, Procreate file, or just a JPEG. Make your additions. You could print it out and work in traditional mediums, photograph it, and then just send me the image of the photograph. Again, I'm absolutely fine with that. If you're going to contribute something for this particular sketch, then we're relatively limited in time. The most I would probably leave between the episodes is about 2 weeks. So the sooner you get it in, the better. Please make sure when you're thinking of contributing to one of these videos that you look at the point at which this video was actually uploaded to YouTube, because if it was several months ago, we've probably moved on beyond this picture. You can still send me the results and I'll look at it, and I may well feature the ones that stand out as being particularly interesting at a later point, but generally I'm going to move with the latest video. So 1 to 2 weeks is the maximum amount of time, probably a week. So if you can get it sent to me before the following weekend that this is uploaded, that's more likely to feature in an upcoming video. But like I say, sometimes it may be extended to 2, and I may well feature the really interesting ones even on a video once we've gone past that point anyway. Hope you've enjoyed watching today. Please get involved and I shall catch you back here again. See you later.